right, so I'm a bit taller than the other speakers. Is that okay? Fantastic, fantastic. So I'm not sure if I'm actually talking about AI that much, but it's okay. It's all relatable. But this is the real talk now. Like, it's fantastic to have honourable ministers, but I have this theory that honourable ministers have fantastic arguments. They speak well, and that's why we elevate them to our positions of responsibility in our communities. Unfortunately, now you've got a word from your sponsors. So, the architecture of trust, it is something that got pulled into the title because at Link Digital we have 5 values. One of them is to architect trust through honesty. And I think that's a core value in lots of communities where you are authentic, open and honest about the way you operate with your peers. Then you'll be observed as a trustable character. And in institutions, in public life, in corporations, you try and emulate all of those good qualities that we have in our societies. And how would that relate to data is also part of that equation. So let's see. Who am I? So I'm the chairman of Link Digital. Link Digital's been around for 22 years. I started in 2001. I'm in this sort of role now as visionary or strategic governance type person with a CEO, with some strong technical leads, some great people. But my experience is in web development. So from 2001, I was part of that kind of convergence of marketing, communications, and IT, which sort of formed digital. And digital has become like a concept or a tooling in our societies which covers lots of different things. And I was at a talk yesterday where people were talking about business and data, which I see is still an extension of the same thing. It's like a curvature coming out where marketing communications, which is our informal intention of shaping the hearts and minds of people, versus IT, our more regulated formal control of processes and tools and technologies that do the work and regulate our ways of moving together as a group. But yeah, business leaders, business deciders, business forums and expert groups and whatnot, they represent our informal control and our informal ability to move societies forward in the way we'd like them to move. And data today has been seen as our currency. It's the telemetry. It's what we are. It's what we're doing. It's our impact or our footprint. And to know our data is to know ourselves, know where we're going. For others to know that is for them to know us and where we're going, perhaps to manipulate that. So over the last 10 years, I've been much more involved in the open source community, open data and open government. And today, Link Digital is 32 people. We're very, very, very small. We're not like a big software as a service type company. We're more of a bespoke web development company that's gotten into this crazy open data, open source space. But they're all across the world. They're all virtual. We don't have a physical office anymore, which means that we have to rely on trust quite a bit in our organization, hence the value of architecting trust through honesty. The kind of clients, this is all the advertorial part. We'll get to the trust thing again. The kind of clients we work with have largely been Australian government clients with the Open Data Portal, Data.gov.au starting in 2012, and then propagating out to all the states and territories and also doing open data programs or products such as climate data portals and whatnot. And increasingly, because we work with CCAN as an open source piece of tech, there's 2 co-stewards, Link Digital and Dartopian. We get the opportunity, the privilege to work with some fantastic organizations and here in Canada as well. So, and even Open North we're partnering with, and Living Lakes we're partnering with to open up and expand our work here in Canada. So we just registered in Ontario, a subsidiary. What we want to do here in Canada is very much what we've been doing in Australia, just try and participate in the open data ecosystem, fully understand what our responsibility there could be, and then deliver on our opportunity and capability in that area of responsibility. Basically, we build open data portals, right? We have a process, we have a management framework, we understand, evaluate, we try and then define and agree, get a contract together, and then the last 3 points there is really the business model, how we work. We do professional services, we do managed services. We build the thing and then we look after the thing. Wrong way. And that's just the list of the portals that we've done just in the sort of Australian public data context. So as I said, we've done like the federal data portal, then various state and territories, and then some cities. Actually, Brisbane City Council just went to Open Data Soft here in the room. Put your hand up, which is cool. Like their city level portals might be more smart city orientated. Data, however, is still an intrinsic part of the transparency, participatory democracy, the kind of promise-making and evidence-based social promise that we have in government, and that's a big part that I focus on. Getting now back to the meat of the topic, trust. Trust is like the air we breathe. When it's present, nobody really notices. When it's absent, everybody notices. And apparently that's attributable to Warren Buffett. I spent about 5 minutes trying to work out if that's true. I can't really trust that is attributable to Warren Buffett, because I saw lots of memes where it's been put out that that's what he said. I saw lots of websites that say that's what he said, lots of blog posts that quoted it. But it's just, I gave up. Who cares? I'll just say it. Post-truth, though, is also post-trust. So to that quote, we notice when it's not around. And right now, like immediately, in the last days, in the last weeks, in the last month, there's a lot of discussion around trust. It's probably misguided. We had the Honourable Minister also talk about trust. It's probably misguided, because trust is the language of our abusers. That's what they say when they say, trust me, I'm lying. That's what they want you to have. So what we really need to do is invert that and think about risk. Do I want to risk giving my data to Facebook? Not do I want to trust giving my data to Facebook? That's the kind of conversation we need to have, because risk can be mitigated, risk can be measured, the impacts can be different for different people, so you can actually address the different cohorts in all these different ways. Trust is very much a subjective social belief system. It's not that easy to measure. It's not that easy. People can have faith and trust together. So over the last couple of months, we've also been talking about it. We did a sort of literature review and a comparison sort of study between the different work going on between Australia and Canada. We've also looked at what happened in Australia recently around our referendum on The Voice, which was, in my view, like a terrible travesty, lots of disinformation, making it difficult for people to make what I would have thought would be the right decision. Yes, give Indigenous Australians a voice in Parliament, constitutionally. And, arriving in Vancouver, I even just noticed this Harvard Business Review has got an issue out at the moment, a special issue, many articles on trust. So it is in our societies today, and it is, going back to that quote, I think something we need to be aware of, that there is a lack of trust. Friday, Sam Altman. I'm not a tech bro. I don't really follow these organizations and think, well, fantastic. But there's something to think about when we understand that a CEO can represent an organization's morals or trust, and that the belief that we have that trust to guide our understanding of that organization can be unsettled by something like a board coup or whatever it might have been, a bit of controversy. And suddenly everything is untrusted. Some of the debate, I don't know if people follow things like Twitter Spaces, but there's like an accelerate everything group of tech bros, and then there's another group of tech bros, more the Elon Musk X's or whatever they call themselves. A lot of them are talking about this, what's going on, how can we trust things. Some folks were talking about the fundamental problem with non-profits, that you can't trust them. They're not part of the economic model. There's no investors, there's no return. What's the grift, How do we actually invest in something like that? That OpenAI is, allegedly kind of non-profit, and it is, might actually be a bit more simple. It might just simply be, it makes a less visible target in terms of copyright infringement. So if you're going to create something that's going to harvest all the world's knowledge to build into a model, don't be a corporate, be a non-profit, because you're less of a target. But anyway, Sam's out, Sam's back, whatever is going on. It's just a really interesting reflection on how we project trust onto things and what can happen when that gets unsettled. So looking at that first article in the HBR issue, this is basically trust. This is the way we subjectively understand it. or it's one of the models that we might think about it. So it's a trust circle, authenticity, empathy, and logic that if I can authentically say that I experience the real you, if I believe that, if I can also think that I think you can do it. I think your reasoning and judgment, your capabilities are sound. And I also have empathy, an empathetic understanding that I believe you care about me and my success. If those things all ring true, then I can have a high level of trust, high confidence in you. But it's very, very, very subjective. And we do project those same subjective things onto the intersubjective entities and concepts and everything else that we have in our lives, because we live our lives through a subjective experience. So, 180 plus cognitive biases, how much can we trust our subjective? It's a crazy thing to think that trust is so important when trust, pumping through our brains and making us do or not do things, making us know or not know things, making us believe or not believe things, is subject to so many cognitive biases. So there's 180 plus reasons to be careful when trusting the way we trust. A couple of more examples. I guess, we trust in digital twins. We trust in the digital version of things, of real people like LeBron James. We can follow that person. We can follow their social media tweets. And we can have a sense of what their character is, and we can kind of project onto that. Who knows if he's actually creating that digital twin himself, or it's a representative. He's not really on Twitter anymore. He's more on Instagram. So he's got 100 million on Instagram. But similarly, the NBA is an entity. It's a construct, and it can also have followers. It can also have people trusting in it. And there's LeBron there, throwing some chalk in the air, clapping, which is a pre-game ritual of his. So he believes and has trust in pre-game rituals, concepts. He'll get his game on, and that's something he trusts. These are all things that we project onto the world around us to make sense of the world, to make sense of the way we interact with the world. So, trusted data. Last week, I think it was the ODI Summit, or the week before. Yeah, right on. ODI in the room. They are addressing this. They are, just like when we, like in Australia, we have like the heart health tick or something like that for foods, consumables. We get these ideas of how can we create an accreditation system so to attribute trustworthiness to something. So ODI is working on that. It'll be in beta. I think it's releasing this month, or has in the last day or two. The ODI data principles are the ways in which, the lenses through which you might want to assess trust. Basically what it comes down to is if you've got all the normal stuff that an organisation should have, good data governance, privacy statement, data breach type stuff so that everything's in place, active measures against bias, all these different things, then you can kind of tick all those boxes, and at the end of the day, you might get accredited by a program that ODI might set up, and then you'll get that tick on your organisational website, and you might be seen as more trustworthy. Fantastic. So the data assessment or data practices assessment tool is that kind of program as I understand it. And these sorts of programs I think are going to be super important. However, they're not going to be the end of it. The conversation I think around trust, the conversation we need to have in our societies around how we bridge our informal controls and our formal controls needs to address information spaces themselves and our civic spaces, and recognising that there is a digital civic space that we need to create and nurture and protect. It doesn't exist in a protected space at the moment. Our digital civic space is full of disinformation, misinformation, and in the best of cases, epistemic bubbles. So an epistemic bubble, if you're not familiar with it, very similar to a echo chamber. Epistemic bubble, though, is that information, like valuable information, just might be missing or omitted for no great reason. It's not there. Whereas an echo chamber, really important information for a topic, for a discussion, is actively pushed out. It's actively dismissed. It's actively attacked once it's brought into an echo chamber. So the kinds of things we all talk about in the news and what gets politicised, that's largely conversation about echo chambers. But epistemic bubbles is probably a more interesting way to think about it, because you can identify a conversation around like a social prospect or a social good or a social activity, and try and make sure that we have all the right speakers, all the right information into this debate, into this conversation that we're going to have, and construct that. And that can be a digital space. That can be a digital civic space. But popping epistemic bubbles is also a practice that we can try and work towards. So what kind of activities can we do with open data? Well, it can provide a wide range of data sources representing different perspectives, meaning that those who are using data or via intermediaries that use that data in data visualizations or interactions or interactives, they can bring that wider collection of perspectives through. Similarly, various fields can be broaden the understanding from, bringing it in from different sort of interdisciplinary sort of perspectives, if you think about it academically. There's also common ground for fact-based discussions, and this is one that I think is a great example of where if you've got a particular topic, such as climate, you really only want a discussion based on facts. People can have opinions, but they don't actually have a right to bring those opinions into a fact-based discussion. And a debate can actually have a pre-vetted set of facts. People can submit their facts. You can have a vetting process for your facts. And then you can have a discussion based on the pre-agreed facts, things like that. That kind of sanitization of our public discussions in our civic spaces is probably something we really need to do. Because information pollution, disinformation, misinformation, it's so cancerous, so likely to unsettle any kind of discussion that we have to really be quite proactive in it. So yeah, stories of open data correcting misconceptions, they can inspire trust, engagement with public data sources. Open data can empower individuals to critically assess information. We can actually help people think more critically with open data. And data literacy can help people understand how to discern quality data, spot biases in data presentation, and make informed conclusions. It's getting a bit harder. Like, there's a data literacy level, which we're not going to expect everyone to get to, right? But once we create more purposeful digital spaces, digital civic spaces, and bring people into that, then that's the kind of space where we can do this education. The literacy levels isn't at the level of open data, data skills, data analysis. It's about using data in those created public spaces to have good, informed social debate. Anyway, I could go on. There's lots of cool things you can do with open data, and that's my real sentiment for today, right? Architecture of trust, the way we want to support civil society, the way in which we want to live into our future. We have to recognize that digital is part of that. And digital increasingly will shape future generations. The way we get impressioned, the way we're attenuated through our technology with regard to the information we choose or get access to is only going to increase. The applications and means by which people can tap into those attenuations is only going to become more sort of obvious, and we need to design this in a really cool way. Open data is a great place to start. Another really recent thing that's just out, I'm going to check this book, this David R. Sampson. I haven't read it, but it looks really cool. I think he's an associate, I think it's the University of Toronto, so it's relevant. But it could be that so tribalism, our tribe, our camp, our echo chamber, as it were, the people we have an affinity towards, they will influence us massively. And we might need to rethink the way that they work. So who do we elevate into those positions of power or referenceable power in terms of topics and debates is really important. And we might need to go back to I'm guessing this is what the book's about, I haven't read it. We might need to go back to like a much more careful process in elevating people into positions of power. Our social hierarchies would go back to more like indigenous beliefs around the elders, the responsible parties who will work it out themselves and provide guidance to the whole tribe. We need to be really careful about how we curate those people, and we need to bring them into the conversation. And we might need to repair some things as well. So one thing you might think of is in cybersecurity, there's like a blue network analysis. In our information space, we can do a blue network analysis. That is all the people that we can use to defend ourselves. Identify the people with good communication reach and ability to change people's hearts and minds, identify them and support them. So if you're working in a public institution, you want to support your public institution's mission and purpose and directives, it would make sense to do a blue network analysis in the public domain and find out who are the communicators most likely to be aligned with our public institution. How can we support them in supporting a good information discourse with the people that they influence? Because influences aren't going away, because social media isn't going away. We need to actively, in our institutions, recognize that and become part of the media or connectedness that social media represents. Last bit, yesterday we released this thing. It's a bit of hubris on my own part. It's something that's come to my mind over the last number of months. It's an attempt to reinvent the wheel. It's not a new thing, but it's a policy to practice program or accelerator program. The concept is that when we develop policy, and we ultimately want that policy to be executed as a program of activity in government, we should do it in such a way that the purpose is clear. The positive intent of that policy is clear, such that we can also identify the negatives that might be on either side of that positive. How do we correct and move away from those negatives when they're identified and get the policy back on track? This kind of adaptive policy management, as I said, is not new, but it is something that can be implemented. And I think it's a neat thought experiment that we could put together a program, kind of like a 12-week program or a 5-step program, to get a government team with a bunch of stakeholders to workshop how they can do this and build a kind of program of policy to practice, which is more data orientated. It's more in cybernetic type mechanisms, like it's more targeted towards its outcome. And it's completely aligned with open government and open knowledge type principles. So a lot of transparency, a lot of participatory democracy, all the goodness. What might it look like? Effectively, there's already an example of this. So folks in the room might be familiar with the Open Data Handbook, project from Open Knowledge, pulling together lots of things like guides, information, case studies, and resources. And this is kind of a handbook that is out there and people can kind of pick up. They might be the first day on the job working with open data, they've got a job, delivering an open data program, and they can use this handbook to really get a sense of what it's all about and how they can kind of accelerate their understanding and activity in this space. For policy to practice, the thought experiment is that, yes, we should be able to do something like this. Who would be involved in that, who can contribute to that, is the first stage. So that's what we kicked off yesterday. Open North, happy to partner with us on this, but it's an open collective. It will be done in the open as a open by design project. It will be aligned with the Open Government Partnership principles, and it will be aligned with principles of Open Knowledge Foundation as well. And when it's launched, the proper kickoff will be early next year. And if folks would love to hear about that, I would love to tell you about it. I think I am done with a few minutes to spare.